maximum firepower.
Brace for impact!
Oh, nice. Yeah, this is some native file. Okay, anyways, welcome to the Brace for Impact podcast, sponsored by Flaming Hot Cheetos. Get the puffs. There's more surface area for the flaming hotness. I'm Luke. Today we're going to review our last battle report, talk about the Unconventional Warfare event rules, and at the end we will review a Rebel Raddus list. One of my favorites. So, very, very cool stuff for today. We do also have Chandler, as always. How are you doing, Chandler?
I am doing great. So one of the reasons that we wanted to talk about the Unconventional Warfare event rules is they're coming out with that event pack, the Summa All Things, and we don't really know what the fuck is going on with it. They have shown us the box that it's in, a couple tokens,
An awesome
and a
box,
picture
by the way.
of the. It is an awesome box, and a picture of the tentacle monster. So one of the reasons why we're talking about Unconventional Warfare is I think it gives us a good idea of the kinds of things that AMG explores in Armada, the kind of rules changes and approaches to events that they take. And they've done like a couple. They've done Unconventional Warfare, Hunting Season, and another one, Call of Destiny. And so, throughout the next few episodes, we're going to be talking about those, reviewing them, and obviously they weren't entirely well received because nobody plays them.
Yeah, I definitely am not familiar with them at all. I feel like I remember hearing about them, but then that was it. I certainly have never played it. I don't think you and I have ever spoke about it before or even thought about playing it.
Yeah.
So definitely I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. But just because they are not popular or weren't well received when they were, when the events were out, doesn't mean that there's nothing good about them at all. And so we're going to be talking about those kinds of things.
Excellent. And I'll be playing the part of someone who knows nothing about them because I know very little about them.
Yeah.
So if you don't know anything about them, you are in good company. Before we get started, though, we're going to do our standard battle report review. Chandler, go ahead and take us away.
Yeah, so our last battle report was the Hunter-Killer Fleet, which was 4 victory ones, versus Deepwater Fleet, which was, a standard trying to smash you at long range Patriot Fist fleet with Kraken as the commander. And this was a really fucking interesting match because when I built my fleet to be, a pretty standard competitive fleet where, you kill ships really fucking easily. I had 2 Gazantes with HIEs, I had Kraken to guarantee crits, and a couple hard cells, and I was against this 4 victory fleet, and I was like, man, I don't know how you're going to be able to compete at all.
Yeah, on paper, your list looked really, really good.
Yeah.
As far as the victories were concerned, I was going for something basic, but, pretty obvious here. I really wanted to maximize that 7th Fleet card. That was the only upgrade aside from, Link Turbo lasers that was on those ships.
And gunnery teams.
I did forget about gunnery teams. That is a heavy hitter.
And I think that's one of the aspects of the Hunter-Killer Fleet that really put you ahead of the game. Because, 4 victories... It's really, you've got 4 front shots. Not super impressive, but when they all have gunnery teams, it's 4 victories with 8 shots.
And then you combine that with Link Turbo lasers, and it was just nasty.
Yeah, it was really nasty.
And then Screed, when we started getting in close range, really pulled through on those black dice.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy once we started getting close. So... I know you picked for my objectives because you wanted to go first.
Yes,
I had
definitely.
advanced gunnery, planetary ion cannon, infested fields.
I ended up choosing ion cannons.
Yeah, ion cannons. And that one is probably something I would rotate out if I were to play the list again. But, advanced gunnery is pretty obvious.
Hmm.
Even though my list has Patriot Fist, which states you can only attack once per round if you use it, uh, I would still put the advanced gunnery on the Patriot Fist because, having a whole extra attack is way better than just adding 2 blue dice to your attack,
100%.
And Infested Fields is just one of my favorites.
Oh, it's
So
one of
I
my
think,
least favorites.
yeah. I love it. I'll put it in every list. It's so good. So I really think Planetary Ion Cannon is the weak link for this one. But my whole idea was, I'll get an extra attack, I'll burn down a token, and then really hammer it hard with Patriot Fist, and it just really didn't do it. It didn't do it for me. It was super
Well, it's not
weak.
only that, but you kind of help control deployment a little bit more. Laying them out there as they do. In general,
Yeah.
controlling the board, which I think, from my perspective going through that was kind of my biggest thing is, the obstacles were in a very crappy place from my perspective. And then on top of that, I had these 3 tokens to kind of manage with my movements. And, again, I kind of spoke about this while we were playing. For me, my movements and my deployment, it was absolutely critical. I had to maintain that 1 to 4 distance. And so, yeah, I definitely think that it played a role.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Seventh Fleet is I always thought it was distance 1 to 3, and I was like,
Hmm.
that's such a short distance for such an expensive card. It's 5 points for one. Well, really, it's 10 points because one of the Seventh Fleet Star Destroyer titles actually does nothing. You
Correct.
need more than one, and you had 4, which is like 20 points just of titles.
Yes.
So that was fucking crazy. And I think like, man, now that I'm looking back on it, when we were playing, you were using that title all the fucking time.
You had nothing to shoot for, I think, the first half of the game other than my front hole zone. So, yeah, it was coming in constantly.
Now I'm like, what if you're really starting to lay in the points, but what if you put expert shield techs on them? Like, I don't know if you can fit all that,
Mm.
but expert shield techs is the while defending during your spend defense token step. When you spend a redirect, you can reduce the total damage from the attack by 1 instead of resolving that token's effect.
That, you do have the 2 redirects in the victory, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken. So I think that plays really well. Um,
Yeah, that's what I'm
the
saying.
the issue is point cost, right? Because a lot of the reason, and you just said this, of why that list was effective was having the gunnery teams, and then the linked kind of worked really well with it.
That's
And
true.
I was struggling for points when I was building this list. I had no squadrons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was all being dumped into that ship. So every decision that I made, had a pro and con in that sense. So it would be a juggle, right? Like, what would you be giving up to include that as well?
So for that, I'm just doing a quick little rundown here. I would, because you really, what I would take out is the LTTs to
Mm.
kind of fuel it. Maybe Gergerod,
Oh,
but
God.
then you only have like 1 or 2 linked turbo laser towers. So you're really sacrificing rerolls for that damage reduction ability.
And I don't think that you need to double up on the damage reduction that much. Um, I think the rules are so much more important, especially when you're banking on the red dice the way that you are.
Yeah, I agree. But we went through my objectives. But what did you bring for this fleet? Because I don't think I actually saw what objectives you had.
I do have to pull it up. It's been a little bit, so give me a moment. I think that I would actually have that in our Discord list.
Okay, so yeah, you had opening salvo,
Hmm.
contested outpost, and solar corona. Fuck.
Yes. So for me, Solo Corona, it's a must-have. I think that I'm not gonna say I struggle in deployment, but I put a lot of stock in deployment. Also, being able to remove an accuracy is just super dope for me. I think that Solo Corona is almost as much of a must-have as Advanced Gunnery is in a lot of my list building.
Yeah, I agree. It's just one of those amazing objective cards that
Absolutely.
is so terrible to pick when you're first player.
Hmm.
Contested outpost, pretty obvious. and pretty devastating when you've got 4 Command 3 ships.
Yes. So
And
yeah,
then
that was going to be
opening
my point
salvo is
getter.
pretty self-explanatory.
Exactly. The advanced gunnery one was not going to do anything for me because everyone did have the gunnery team card. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yikes. Really, the only other thing I might consider is like most wanted. I think opening salvo is like way better.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially because I could have used that boost while we were at the longer ranges. Because once we got into like the close range, black dice was being tossed everywhere.
Yeah, and one of the things that really started fucking me up is when once we started, like round 1, round 2,
Mm-hmm.
and I started seeing just the tide wall of Victory 1 ships that like because you'll do this pretty often is you'll lay things out in deployment and then you'll just turn everything towards like the sides of the board.
Mm-hmm.
You want all your front arcs like just to swing around and have this whole like column of fucking death.
Yes.
And so once I saw that, I was like, all right, now I need to pull my recusant like way far into your deployment zone so that it's not getting shot like fucking 4 times in a row. Because the recusants are so fucking weak. They're like one of the weakest large ships in the game, I think.
I definitely agree because as we were playing, I was like, oh man, it's a large ship. It's going to take, 2 or 3 turns of constant battering to knock it out. But once I actually started laying into it, I was like, oh, this is going to die pretty quickly.
It's more like a medium ship on a large
Mm-hmm.
base because it doesn't even have that thick of a front shield. It's got 3 on the front and then 3 on both sides, and I think it's like 2 on the rear. It's like it's a medium ship, honestly.
Yeah, that matches up with the Vic, which is a medium ship.
And one of the things I dislike about it is it's got the fucking evade defense token, which is
Mm-hmm.
like, evades are pretty good. But on a
I think
large
so.
ship, you don't get to use its extra ability of discarding it to affect an additional die. So it's only a standard reroll, and you don't get that cool bonus effect.
Yeah, unless you're going against like an SSD, that'll be the only way.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But that's such, who's even flying that anymore?
I don't know. SSDs can be cool.
It was definitely cooler before 1.5.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was definitely the kingpin, but
Man, no, yeah, I 100% agree. I think Evade is a great token. I don't use it enough. I wish I did. Just I
yeah.
usually stick with the larger ships, but it's not even like you can, give it the grace of saying, "Oh, they made this before we had that rule change." No, like this was definitely after the fact, so they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Um,
And one of my problems is I keep flying the Recusant like it's an ISD.
it's totally not.
It's totally not. Like I keep pointing like right at the target I'm killing, and I should be like way off to the side strafing it. And I just can't get it right when I fly it. Especially the Patriot Fist.
Yeah, I think like its biggest boon is that it has the salvo. Being a newer ship, naturally it's going to have that. But like, other than that, I just don't think it's a very competitive ship, if you would.
Maybe that's true, but I'm gonna keep flying it. I've had a lot of success, especially with the Patriot Fist one. But like, I feel like your particular fleet just had so much hull that
Mhm.
it wasn't gonna do it. It was like 36 hull, I think, on the board for you.
Yeah, it was up there.
Yeah, it was just incredible. And the Patriot Fist is really good at taking down like big targets, even little targets, but a bunch of medium targets. I just didn't have enough turns.
That's super fair. Well, I mean, still, like, it wasn't a bad list that you had. I just think that it was matched against something that um, it is in its own category, if you would.
Yeah, it was definitely weird to fly against, and you were reducing damage everywhere. I think when my vultures were able to finally do a damage, you were just like, oh no, I'm just going to reduce that to 0, and that was so triggering.
Oh, you actually brought something up that was interesting because listening to the podcast, and I remember this. You had a line where you were like, "Okay, with all these vultures, I have a like 3 in 10 chance of actually getting a hit through." Right? That was like
Yeah,
something that you had said.
yeah.
That means I'm going to negate all of that damage because I have 4 copies of Seventh Fleet. So
Yeah, that's
statistically, there was no way you were going to do any squadron damage as long as you were
yeah.
attacking the front hull zone.
Yeah, and I think the line is out of 10 vulture attacks, the average damage output is 3.
Oh, I remember that pretty well, so not
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, because a vulture has a 3/8 chance of doing damage.
Hmm.
Because the red die had hit, double hit, and then, the rest of the die is useless for squadrons.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, pretty piss poor. Especially like without bomber. But man, even with bomber, because I was playing yesterday and I had DBS 404 and I had a hyena bomber, and I rolled DBS 404 with his ability, so that's 3 red dice,
Hmm.
all blanks. Got bomber command reroll into another blank. And it's like that shit happens a lot.
Yeah.
It's so inconsistent. And it's really preventing me from making lists where I rely on bomber damage.
I just don't think that's a strong suit of that particular type.
I agree. I agree. It's just not droid's strong suit.
Like if I had any squadrons in my list, I think that would have been different.
Yeah. I want to rely on like hyenas and their damage, but really the best bomber for separatists right now until we get something else are the hyenas, and then in some cases Grievous.
Yep.
Grievous is probably the best one, but like he's so good at chumming up generic squadrons that I never move him to attack a ship.
I just don't think that the squadron game is the meta for the separatists there. I really think that relying on like the hard cells to do a lot of the heavy hitting on the ships, and then just using those squadrons to keep other squadrons off of you to allow you the room to do what you need to do. In my perspective, again, I haven't played them
Mm-hmm.
personally, but going against them, I think that that's how they should be played.
Yeah, and that's for sure one way to play them, because honestly, it's so easy to dominate the board with separatist squadrons. But after that, you can't really do reliable ship damage,
Nope.
which
It's very
sucks.
defensive.
And then the things that you can rely on, like the tri-fighters with their black anti-ship, it's like A damage that you can get.
Hmm.
And it's just not...
It's not enough.
It's not enough to invest a full 134 points into
Hmm.
and just not get enough.
Yeah, you and I are definitely in agreement on that.
I've got to make some lists that have like more than just 2 hyenas.
Hmm.
I think I'll try one that has like 4 or 6 hyenas and a couple vultures, and maybe I'll get like some Gazantes with flight controllers, so the few vultures I have can just really hammer something and make way. But yeah, separatist squadrons are in a weird spot for me. Well, really, separatist squadrons are dominant in my opinion, but once you dominate, your bombers are kind of fucking ass.
I mean, it's all about the balance. I'm sure that was intentional.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you can really fucking sweep the board of squadrons, and then after it, you kind of make sure you have
Something to hit with.
something to hit with. Fuck. But yeah.
Just because you had me thinking about like further damage mitigation for the fleet that I had in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Tarkin,
Tarkin.
I think. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Tarkin. Not Tarkin. Jesus, what's the blue guy? Help me out here.
The blue guy, Thrawn?
Thrawn, that's the one. I am already a full glass of wine in right now. Anyways. But yeah, Thrawn, I think, would have been fantastic to also pull the concentrate fire to activate my gunnery teams, but then also have that engineering in my back pocket.
Oh yeah, like load him up with engineering commands and...
Yeah. Like, he's super expensive, but I feel like if I could have fit that in there, that would have been devastating as far as that.
That's the thing, is he's super expensive. Let's see if we can make that real quick, because I'm interested in.
I don't think I can. I would have had to give up linked turbo lasers somewhere.
Yeah, but maybe that's fine if you just bank it. Actually, that's 400 points.
On the nose? Is it really?
On the nose, Thrawn and each Vic 1 has gunnery team, LTT, and 7th Fleet Star Destroyer.
Ooh.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but there goes that bid. So the bid was something that was very important to me, actually.
Yeah.
With Black Dice, I definitely wanted to be first player.
But that's the thing, because now Thrawn really opens up your list for flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're losing out on Screed, I don't think it helped you that much.
I thought Screed was cool. I picked him because he was kind of on the cheaper end.
Yeah.
I don't think he was the most effective commander for that list.
But now you can do navigate dials and take the command and position your victories a little bit better, maneuver them a little more, and then you've got, Thrawn's 3 engineering dials in the back pocket. It's interesting. It's interesting for sure. And Thrawn is an amazing force multiplier. So the fact that you have 4 medium ships that he can affect and make more flexible. Like maybe you don't have all 3 of the dials be engineering. Maybe you have another one be nav or something that you need.
That could have come in handy.
Yeah.
Because, a part of that list is the positioning is of the utmost importance.
Which is ironic because you've got fucking victories, which are the worst at positioning.
Oh, that's why the deployment was so important, right? Like, there was no way I was going to turn these guys around. So making sure that they were starting out in the best spot and then pointed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, that was I do have to say, though, that was one of my favorite matches in a very, very long time.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So let's get to, like, the middle of the match. Like, once your flagship goes down and you started hammering at my Recusant, were you just like, oh, this is fucking over?
Yeah, like, so the moment I actually started doing the damage on the Recusant, the game felt like it turned in my favor. Up until that point, I was really on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like, I think another turning point was when I dropped to speed 0. I'm not really sure where that falls into when my flagship got taken out. I think that was definitely before.
So you did that cheeky bullshit, like, at the end of turn, 2.
Okay.
And it let you essentially avoid my initial engagement, which I pre-measure all this shit, so I know, like, at the end of round 1, I know that at the start of round 3, I'm going to be able to tap you. And so when you do that, when you go down to speed 0, you're like, oh, now I have a whole nother round where you don't get to touch my flagship, which is so triggering. And that really fucks it up, because now my Recusant has to get closer, and I think that's where it really started taking all the damage.
So for me, those were the 2 turning points where I felt like things started to go in my favor, whereas before I was definitely concerned.
And it's the same for me. Like, once you did that, and I was like, oh fuck, now my Recusant's going to be close to your second victory, which is like just paralleling your flagship.
Mm-hmm.
It really fucked it up. And then I was like, once I start taking damage, like after the second shot, my Recusant didn't have any more shields. They were all gone. And then it's just, there's no contain. You just start taking crits.
Yeah, and I was dishing out a lot of those.
Yeah, so that was fucking bleak. And I was hoping that I could, like, just fly past you. And I got close, but man, if I only had, like, more health, yeah, I had like fucking 3 or 4 crits at the end. Bleak.
For you, I mean, would you say that those were the same turning points? Like, would you say there was anything else in particular that stood out as like a negative or a positive?
Really, when my Recusant died, it didn't get away, and then I just had, like, my 2 hard cells and my, like, leftover Gazanti in front of 3 victories, and I was like, oh no.
And they were practically untouched nonetheless.
The last 2, I don't think I even touched,
Yeah.
but I was able to get away with killing the 3rd one. But then I was like, oh, this is fucked. Like, I'm in the front arc of 2 victory ones at close range with
Gunnery teams.
gunnery teams. I'm like, fuck this.
Yeah.
And I was trapped. Like, there was nowhere to go. And I tried speeding up, but that didn't do anything. The damage was done at that point. And we just went through the motions of my abysmal failure.
Something else that happened, and this is backtracking a little bit, is you bumping those Gazantis.
Yeah, that was more of like a strategic decision of bumping them so that I don't obstruct the Gazanti's side shot, and so I can get some more damage on there.
So for me, and this was again just my perspective, is with those Gazantis, they were heavy hitting Gazantis. They weren't there just for fluff, right? Like
Yeah.
they were useful, and so I feel like giving them that extra damage just made it all the more easy for me to take them out. And I don't know, I personally would have taken the obstructive shot.
Maybe. But again, like they did their thing. They got like HIEs off like 1 or 2 times on like the flagship, and so I think that's points well spent. And yeah, I think it was either my other Gazanti or my flagship that I was avoiding obstructing, because my Gazantis were going fast as fuck.
They
And
were.
this is something I've been trying to do with Separatists is like round 5 and 6 is like where all my ships start dying.
Mm-hmm.
And not just like 1 or 2, but like my whole fleet starts evaporating on round 5. So, and I think it's a lot because I go speed 2 or speed 1. And when round 5 and 6 come around, like I don't have the speed to get there. So what I've been trying to do is, be at speed 2, round 1 and 2, and then start accelerating.
I think that's a
round
good
3,
strategy.
and then just try and get my ships the fuck out of there.
I think also with just having those 4 Vics, there was such a wide space that you just couldn't go into, right? So trying to maneuver at those speeds, I felt like was an extra challenge for you.
Yeah, I think I'm just looking at when you started to set up the tide wall. You have like almost 70% of the board in just this deadly fuck you zone. Or if there's any ship there, it's just going to get hammered by 4 victories. That just the area denial is insane.
I definitely agree.
So, thinking about like the final parts of the game, like is there anything that you would do differently? I mean, it's kind of strange to ask you that because like you fucking tabled me, but
No, like really, like my only changes would have been in fleet composition, and that would have been at this point taking Thrawn. As far as anything that I would have done differently, everything else really fell in line for me during that game.
yeah, because Thrawn is good as well because like once like if Thrawn dies and you did your Thrawn dial at the start of the round, like I think you still get those.
You do,
Yeah.
because you took Screed out, and like I wasn't able to capitalize when I was kind of in close range. There was a couple opportunities, whatever, where I would have really liked to have used him to boost that damage, but yeah, not enough for me to say I would have changed.
Yeah,
That.
and I think that is one of the things I would have changed if I were to fly your fleet, because you did just like a straight, single file troop line.
Yes.
With your victory ones. I would have done 3 in the front and the flagship in the back.
Ooh. I don't think you're wrong about that. That would have been a really easy way for me to keep everyone within 1 to 4 as well.
Keep everyone in 1 to 4, and then because once I saw your flagship out on the edge, I was like, I'm just going to target that with everything. I'll kill that, and then I'll get the second one and try and disengage at that point because there's so much damage. But like if you just pick up the flagship and you put it behind the middle victory, it's like how do you even target that? How do you shoot that?
No, that makes sense. And it would have been like a really good like rear guard, so to speak.
Yeah. So I think that's what I would change, just as far as like deployment and everything. But the victories are so big, I don't know how you would
I had a
deploy
real
them
big
to where you can
challenge
do
in that
that.
deployment. Trying to again like 1 to 4. It's different than 1 to 5. Like if it was 1 to 5, that would have been easy peasy, right?
Yeah,
But that's just not the case. So yeah, deployment was very tricky for me. I don't think that there was another way that I could have done it while staying within that 1 to 3 of the border there.
yeah. I'm sure there's some way to do it, but maybe like put the
If I was more in the
flagship like
center,
sideways. Yeah, you would probably have to center it a little bit more.
exactly. But I mean, that's just not that. Like when I play with you, I can't just give you run of the edges like that.
Yeah, I love running on the edges.
Yeah, I have to choose a defensible position essentially, and then make sure I'm in a position to defend it. No, yeah, I gotta play my opponent a little bit in that sense.
Yeah, so some of the things I'd change about my Recusant fleet is like the HIEs were great, but I think it's a bit overkill and it makes the Gazantes too much of a juicy target.
They were worth it to shoot at.
Yeah, but you also like didn't have any squads, so maybe like dropping those for some ship damage. So like if I do dominate the squad game, maybe they can start throwing hyenas at you, get a couple in there. But I don't know. Oh, and maybe not Kraken. Maybe some other commander. But Kraken is so fucking amazing.
I think you use him very well too.
Yeah. But overall, I think my fleet's really solid. The one major change is the planetary ion cannon. I think if I had a different defensive objective, like fucking fire lanes, it's just a different game.
Mm. Yeah, fire lanes. I mean, I'm trying to think like in that situation, like would I have chosen anything? One of the other ones. That's a tough call.
Yeah.
That's a tough call. I think fire lanes would have been the better choice though.
Yeah, for sure. But also, like, I've played fire lanes so much, and at this point, it is a fucking boring ass objective for me. I'm like, oh, I'll do this. I'll start the game with a 90-point lead, and he has to
Hmm.
run at me into my ships, which is a terrible strategy. I'm probably gonna pick like Rift Ambush before I pick fire lanes. At this point,
But that's you talking from a fun perspective as opposed to like a win perspective,
Yeah, that's true.
right? So we kind of have to like separate that, when we have these conversations.
No, I don't think I need to.
Well, I mean, you don't need to,
People
but
who are
you keep it
listening,
in mind.
when I say I'm going to pick Rift Ambush over Fire Lanes, they know. They know why I'm saying it.
That's fair. Well, cool. And as far as the end of the game, do you have any like major comments? I don't personally have any.
I got a new camera for the top down. Hopefully that keeps us from having to lose that top down perspective that I love so
Hmm.
much.
Hmm.
But we'll test it on the next one, and hopefully it's good.
Speaking of the top-down camera, something that I did realize, and it was really funny. It just really, puts into perspective like our different philosophies of fleet building. Your entire side of the board was filled with cards.
Yeah, yeah. You've got like you're like, oh, they're all the same. So I'm just gonna put one victory out and just their tokens next to it, and those are the ships. They all match.
So
You
yeah.
love having your ships share upgrade cards and be similar, and not just similar in the way that they complement each other, but like these
Being
could
the
be the
same.
same ship.
Yeah. I actually need to use those identification tokens.
Yeah,
So that was just something kind of funny that I realized, as I started watching.
yeah. I love having many upgrade cards, complicated interactions between all my ships and everything. So great.
Well, I think it works out, right? Like because like when I look at what you have, um, laid out in front of you, I have a hard time putting together exactly like what the interaction is between all of these ships. I think
Hmm.
that gives you an advantage because like I don't know what's coming unless I really sit down and think about it.
Yeah,
I think that gives you a bit of a bonus.
yeah.
All right, cool. So I think that we're kind of wrapped up here as far as talking about that last match. Again, that was definitely one of my favorite matches. I hope that in the future we continue to have matches like that, especially where I win. That always makes me feel good.
Yeah, winning is good. Getting
um,
tabled is the worst.
it's rare for you.
It's the
It's
worst.
super rare.
Yeah, yeah. And not just
Um,
when I'm playing against you, but just in general. Because
yeah,
I don't like that. I don't like getting tabled.
excellent. All right, so we're moving on to the unconventional warfare review. I'm going to play the part of, someone who doesn't know much about it because I truly don't. So definitely, lead us through this conversation. Tell me a little bit about it.
Okay, so after AMG got all of the Star Wars miniature game properties, everyone's wondering, like, what are they going to do? What are they going to change? Blah, blah, blah. We've all heard the whining before.
Hmm.
And one of the first things they came out with was this event called Unconventional Warfare. And it was, again, just out of the fucking blue. No promo, no hype, nothing. They just dropped this event. They said, on like Wednesday or Thursday, I might be being a little bit dramatic about it, but they were like, all right, so we released this on Wednesday. It's this event. And over the next, starting on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so you have a 3-day period, we're going to be doing this unconventional warfare event. And
Hmm.
it's a whole global event. Everyone can participate. You play a game, and then you submit your results. So, like, who won based on what faction you've got.
Hmm.
Seems interesting.
Sounds interesting.
But again, it's only this Friday, this Saturday, and this Sunday.
I'm not a fan of that. That's not even enough time to plan a game with someone.
That is a lot of the problem. It's like it was just this weird disconnected reality where it's like, do you guys even know how long it takes to set up a game of Armada or X-Wing or any of these games? Like, why only a weekend? And it's a progressive event. So you see these perks right here where it's got, one rule set in a bubble, the second rule set, and then the third rule set.
I
So
see that.
on Friday, there was only the top one. And the two bottom ones were blacked out.
Mm.
So you could only play with the first one. You only knew what the first one was on Friday. Then on Saturday, the second one was unlocked. And then on Sunday, the third one was unlocked. So it was like set up to where you play 3 games back to back to back, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, each with a new set of perks.
Mm.
Which, first off, is fucking ridiculous.
100%.
And so what ended up happening was, I scheduled a game on Sunday. Like, that was as soon as we were able to play.
Hmm.
And by then, all the perks were unlocked. And I was like, why don't you just leave them all unlocked and just be it like that? It was so bizarre, their approach to this kind of event.
I don't know if I've ever heard of anything similar to this happening. Like, this is so out of left field for me.
And just imagine it dropping a random week out of the year with no previous talk about it or anything. It was just like they dumped it, just like they dumped rapid reinforcements. And then they're like, all right, this weekend event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, submit your results. And it went to like organized play promo. It was like whichever side wins will make the Intensify Fire card be that faction's Intensify Fire.
That's super dope.
Which we're now just seeing in the Summa All Things event pack. Like, you see those
That's
Intensify Power cards? Like, that's from, like, this event. Or it could have been
Okay.
from, like, the Call of Destiny event. It's hard
Sure.
to remember. It all blurs together. But, so it was just this strange fucking way of handling an event. Like, why not have it be over the course of 3 months?
Give people an opportunity to actually play this.
Or play a couple games with the first set of perks and then the second set of perks, like that would have been cool. Why 3 days? It was so fucking weird. And it was just this like frantic discord of people like wondering what this is for. Is this like a permanent new rule set, or like is it just like a one and done thing? Are they going to do this again?
It seems like it was a one and done.
It was a one and done.
Heard of anything else like this?
It was just one of the most bizarre fucking things you could imagine.
I would have hated to know if this was something that they used to try to judge interest in the game.
That was also what people were talking about. Is like, are they tracking like how many people are submitting their games for this event and being like, that's how many people are playing?
Yeah, that's not acceptable.
It was only open for 3 days. Like, I was barely able to get a game in and submit some results, It was like, and I'm a junkie for Armada.
And for those that don't know, like to play a game of Armada not at a game store, you had to go out and make this whole board, right? Like this whole extra table that at any other time sits against a wall in your house just to play this game. Like I think that's ridiculous. Like
it's not easy to get a 6x3 table or to like get like imagine if I had a 6x3 like fucking dining table. Like where the fuck would that go in my house,
And then if it's just 6x3, you have no room for your cards.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. You need a whole other side table.
The board I made that you see on our battle reports is a 6x4.
Yep.
And yeah, it's fucking propped up right behind me on the wall, looking ugly as sin.
Yep. Unless it's in use, it is literally nothing else that's useful.
It's just like a big fucking plywood board. Yeah. So it's like, but even going to a game store, like even at our game store, we can only do Armada tournaments on like Sunday. Saturdays are for Warhammer. Fridays are for card games. So it's two days. And I know people who go to game stores, they know this. You can't just go whenever you want. There are events, there are tournaments that are happening all the time.
I typically have to call ahead, be like, hey, like, are you guys doing anything like special today, tournament wise? Because you can't use their small, skinny like card game tables. You have to use the big Warhammer tables.
Yeah, or you make a fuss and you like put two fucking card game tables together, and then you're playing at like a waist height.
At like some wobbly table that's got like this rift in the middle.
Yeah, so it's just a bizarre way to approach it, and it was so like this desensitized approach. It was really bizarre, and it made people, like a lot of people, really upset with the way they were like just approaching these new games they got. It was like, and it was weird because they had Marvel Crisis Protocol as well. So I guess they were just like, oh, fuck it. It's easy to play Marvel Crisis Protocol. I don't know. I haven't played that game. Maybe it's the same. Maybe it takes up the same amount of table space. But it was fucking bizarre at the time.
It was definitely like an X-Wing perspective as opposed to an Armada perspective. Like this is something that you could have done with X-Wing.
Maybe. I don't know. It even then. Because you have, like, it's not like this is a fucking video game. Like, you have to plan to meet up with another person.
Yeah, but X-Wing you can do in, like, your fucking house, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true, but that's about as much as I'll say about that aspect of it.
Fair enough.
But anyway, so these perks, each day, one of them would be unlocked, which is bizarre. But it really signifies this extra area that you can approach Armada in, as far as rules and design space. Because there's no upgrades in this event. There's no extra cards. There's no extra squadrons. It's just like a paper document that says, these are the rules. These are the rules changes. So I think that's pretty interesting. I don't like a lot of the rules because, one, they're insanely busted. Like, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at these.
Which one would you say is the most busted? Let's take
Anvil and Hammer.
Okay. Well, which one from there?
At the start of the command phase, friendly ships at distance 1 to 4 of your flagship gain a readied redirect defense token. discard this token at the end of the round. This token cannot be recovered. So each round, every ship at 1 to 4 of your flagship gets a readied redirect.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the games that I played on Conventional Warfare, it was a Republic Obi-Wan fleet.
Oh, yeah. See, so I'm looking at the perspective of like an Imperial player. I'm like, oh, that's good for like the first couple rounds of shooting, but after that, it's kind of But if you're using Obi-Wan, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, it was like Obi-Wan, expert shield techs, all that kind of nonsense. Fucking tranquility. It was unbelievable. But anyway, so to go through the perks, there's 2 sets. There's Unrivaled Starfighters or Anvil and Hammer.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was weird is you pick it after or between place obstacles and place forces.
Oh, so this isn't even part of like the list building process. This is like an after effect.
Which is weird because it feels like it should be an effect during fleet building.
That's what
which
I
it
initially
kind of
thought.
is, but it kind of isn't. And you can generate a fleet that takes advantage of both of the perks and then decide
which is best for the fit.
which is best for the game, which can be cool, but also is a bit weird. So you pick after placing obstacles, and then you unlock the perks.
So I feel like the big balancing aspect is like the rules in fleet building. If you're going to be choosing Unrivaled Starfighters, for instance, each one can have you must include 2 ships with a squadron rating of 3 if you're going to be using the Unrivaled Starfighters. But I mean, that's just stuff that makes sense. Anvil and Hammer, I think, is really the only one that's like restrictive, in which you can only include. You can't include more than 1 ship with a command rating of 1. So like you can't have more than 1 Gazanti in that fleet. I feel like that's like the big restrictor. I'm just trying to again, what does this have to do with alignment? Where does that fall into place?
So the alignment part of it is part of the global event. So Imperial and Separatists are on one team, Rebel and Republic on another team. And then when you submit your results, you just say light side, dark side 1, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so that had nothing to do with like the rules. It was just kind of fluff. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so essentially, you build up your fleet to match one of these perks, Unrivaled Starfighters or Anvil and Hammer. And so Unrivaled Starfighters, each fleet must include at least 2 ships with a squadron rating of at least 3. Each fleet cannot include any ships with fleet point cost higher than 150, which is like SSD and Starhawk,
Yep.
And then Anvil and Hammer, each fleet cannot include more than 1 ship with command rating of 1. Each fleet must contain at least 3 ships. So those are the restrictions, and I think having fleet building restrictions is really fucking cool and interesting.
No, I'm in agreement with that. You're just looking over this. This is something I would have expected to have read in like Corellian Conflict or the other expansion there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels a lot like one of those like campaign expansions. But what's interesting about it is like playing with restrictions is fun. Like it's fun to have restrictions for fleet building. Like you can only have 4 aces in a fleet. Like that's one of the things that wasn't always an aspect of the game, and it now is. And I feel like fleet building is way more interesting with that restriction. It's like, oh man, I really want Anakin, I want Axe, I want this and that, but you can only have 4. So where are you going to drop that squadron off?
Mm-hmm.
And adding on to that is interesting, and getting a benefit for having.
If you fit this bill.
Yeah, if you fit this bill, or you have a more restricted fleet, or maybe like your fleet can't take a certain kind of upgrade and then gets a sideways benefit, Like maybe, your fleet can't have any ordnance upgrades. Like you can't take any upgrades that have an ordnance slot. But your flagship gets an extra turbo laser. You can do kind of sideways enhancements like that. And I think that's really cool.
awesome.
biggest problem I have with the way that this is presented is a lot of the times when I was playing these matches, I was just fucking forgetting what all the perks were because they weren't upgrade cards.
This is like a separate document that you
It's
have
a
to
separate
reference.
document, and we put it to the side, and I kept looking at all my upgrades and stuff, and I just fucking it wasn't there. It wasn't on my fleet, and so it was really difficult to remember all of these perks. Like 3 perks is way too many.
Mm-hmm.
Like one really strong perk is enough, and that's honestly what I ended up doing. I just locked in on one perk
And focused on that.
and built a fleet that would maximize on that benefit. And the one that I played against focused on Anvil and Hammer's second perk, where you gain a redirect token, and I was unable to kill anything. It was just unable to have any damage done. But I like the fleet building restrictions, and I think if you have like, I don't know what you would call it, but like a fleet building upgrade card, or an unconventional tactics card, that's like a fleet-wide upgrade. It doesn't really go on a ship, but you put it next to your flagship or something, and it says, these restrictions need to be met, and then you gain this benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can be multiple benefits. The cards are bigger now, so you can do things like that. I think that's really interesting.
I feel like this was like a good idea. It was just the execution.
Yeah, I agree. Because that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it, is there are a lot of good ideas, but none of what's on paper, none of what's presented is usable, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, none of this. Like Anvil and Hammer, its restrictions are so broad. You need at least 3 ships, which literally every fleet should have.
Yes.
And you can't take a ship or more than 1 ship with a command rating of 1, which is so fucking easy.
Yeah, can't have 2 Gazantes, basically.
It's like, oh, how about your fleet needs to be made of ships that have more than hull 5? Like, you can't have any less than hull 5 ships. It's like, that's a restriction.
I agree. I think that the Unrivaled Starfighters is a lot more restrictive, so to speak.
Kind of, but again, you can make a fleet. Yeah, one of the things I'm trying to get at is you can make a fleet that meets the requirements of Unrivaled Starfighters and Anvil and Hammer, and if you
Easily.
can do that, it's not restrictive enough.
Well, I mean, because then at that point, like, what's the point of having the ability to select after the fleets are created, right? So I feel like they kind of had that in mind.
I think that's not good. I don't
You think that's the mistake?
Yeah, that's the mistake, is being able to select on the fly. Like, you should commit to this unconventional tactics build that you're doing. You build the fleet around it. You should have a plan for it. But like, being able to pick one of the 2 is stupid. And I feel like it's too broad, and that aspect doesn't really do anything for me.
So I don't disagree with you, but just reading through the rules kind of PDF that we have here, when it comes to like, reading strategic approach, like this seemed to be like essentially a requirement for them, is they wanted you to have the ability to choose on the fly. So it's kind of, I feel like, when they made it, it was coming from a completely different perspective. So it was never really going to fit that bill, essentially.
Yeah. Also, just reading the strategic approach, this is another thing where it's just like fucking tone deaf. It's like, players may declare a single strategic approach for their squad based on their chosen squad building restrictions. What squad? There's no such thing as a squad other than the squadron cards in Armada. It's like, they're fleets. They're fleets. It's not a squad. So it's just like fucking weird. And I think there was something like the place forces step. That's not a step in Armada. It's deployment. Is like just little things like that you see is like, oh, and also you see this fucking PDF. Do you know how fucking hard it was to find this PDF?
I've never seen this before, to be honest with you.
it was almost impossible to find. Like, I found the perks pretty easily, but finding this event rules document, I had to go on like an archived forum that was not associated with AMG at all, because obviously you can't find it on their website.
Mm-hmm.
It was ridiculously difficult to just find an image of this event.
And just a quick takeaway of this PDF, the artwork is magnificent.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
I want this as my desktop background.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
I'm a big fan. So, but, that's just a side touch. I keep looking at it like, damn, that is a beautiful victory.
Yeah, it's awesome. But then once you meet these fleet building requirements, you get the perks. And the perks, I feel like, are really excessive. They do some wild shit to the game.
So when I first read this, I thought it was like, okay, you choose Anvil and Hammer, and then you choose a perk. I didn't realize that you essentially get all fucking 3 of them, depending on, of course, like the day that you play it. It seems.
Yeah, that's one of the things where I was like, so we choose one, and it's like, no, you get all of them for your fleet. It's like, oh my god, it's like 3 additional rule sets to play through.
And so, Unrivaled Starfighters, I think that's good, right? Like, I think that those are good perks, but Anvil and Hammer is strong as fuck.
See, that's the thing. It's like they're not equal at all in power level.
No.
Like, Unrivaled Starfighters sounds good until you start using it. And then you realize it's ass.
And it's almost like Anvil and Hammer is like a counter to Unrivaled Starfighters.
Anvil and Hammer is just counter to everything. Anvil and Hammer is so fucking good. So, Unrivaled Starfighters, the first perk, essentially, the command phase, you can select 4 friendly squadrons, move them at speed 1. They don't trigger squadron keywords or activate them at all. It's just, you get a free speed 1 move. Pretty good.
That's okay, yeah.
But it's a movement. So you can't disengage with this.
Good observation.
Because you can't move if you're engaged. That's kind of one of the limiting factors of it. Like, if it gave them cloak, you choose 4 friendly squadrons, give them cloak, that's fucking cool.
That would have been really
But
cool.
an additional movement, that's only useful for a certain period of time. And then, you have everything engaged or this and that. It's really restrictive.
And then let's see what the counterpart is that you get to just fucking move shields.
Yeah, for Anvil and Hammer. Yeah, you just get to...
Yeah, like that's the counterpart to that. Like, holy shit, that's fantastic.
For nothing, you just... All your ships can move 2 shields anywhere.
That's fucking crazy.
And without exceeding the hull value, but like, honestly,
that's a given, I think.
That's so fucking crazy.
You can just, you take 2 on the nose. You can just take the ones off the back. You did not have to spend an engineering command for that.
It's just fucking for free. It's so incredibly good. And then you look at the second layer of perks, and Unrivaled Starfighters gets friendly squadrons distance 1 to 3 of an enemy ship, gain dodge 1.
That's abysmal.
It's like, what? Just dodge 1? Like,
it's awful. And then the counterpart, again, is that super fucking dope one of, having a fucking new defense token.
Yeah, just a free redirect defense token every time. What? It's like every round? What? It's just 1 to 4 of my flagship, and I get a readied redirect defense token?
Which is a really wide range, as we demonstrated.
Even if I have 2 already, I'll get a 3rd redirect defense token. It's like fucking insanity.
That would have been great with the Vader fleet.
And it's not once per game. I know it says at the end this token cannot be recovered, but that's for things like whale explicits and shit who like recover defense tokens. But like every round,
you just get this token.
And the flagship is friendly to itself, so the flagship will always get it.
Ooh, good point.
So it's fucking insane. Like, even if it said, this is how I know it's busted, even if it said once per game you can do this, it's still insanely good.
Yeah, I mean, to get a defense token is so rare in this game.
Yeah.
And then let's move on to the 3rd Unrivaled Starfighters perk. At the start of the squadron
So this
phase,
one is confusing.
Go ahead.
This one's confusing. So I've read it a bunch of times.
It's not that confusing.
Essentially, you activate 3 of your squadrons, and then
you get to reactivate them during the squadron phase. Am I right?
No. So at the start of the squadron phase, push the activation slider on up to 3 friendly squadrons that match the initiative token. So 3 friendly squadrons that haven't activated already. And then you can unactivate 3 squadrons, which obviously you would choose friendly squadrons, because why would you unactivate your enemy's squadrons, you know? So it's essentially you're making a trade. You activate 3 friendly squadrons to unactivate 3 other friendly squadrons. So squadrons that have already gone this round. And actually, that's a pretty good fucking perk.
But it's the only good one.
But it's the only good one.
And then let's see what the counterpart is for the Anvil and Hammer. At the start of the ship phase, nominate 1 friendly ship. During that ship's activation, it may reroll any number of attack dice during its first attack.
Like, are you serious? Are you fucking serious?
What the fuck?
So the problem is, you have these 2 choices, and if you choose Unrivaled Starfighters, you're
at
just
disadvantage.
You're just choosing the wrong one.
Yeah, 100%.
It's fucking insane. Any number of attack dice, not on top of all the other rerolls that you have. You can just pick them up. It's fine. And you've already got large ships in your Anvil and Hammer list, because why wouldn't you?
And it's like, this game doesn't have the same restriction as like other games like Kill Team, where you can only re-roll a certain die one time. Like, you can keep re-rolling a fucking die until you get the result you want.
Exactly, and it's just so broad. You just get to pick whatever friendly ship. Like, why not your flagship only?
Mm-hmm.
And why not, like, once you do this, you can't re-roll any other dice. Like, you can pick up a whole fistful and redo a little bit of it, but after that, no more re-rolling. Like, you get what you get. Or like a Veteran Gunners, where you have to re-roll all of the dice. You know, you get a free Veteran Gunners. That's
a good way of
cool.
balancing it, by the way.
But this is just like insanely overtuned shit.
Yeah, there's definitely a favorite here.
There's definitely a favorite. And I just can't... I'm not saying that having the additional movement or, you know, getting friendly squadrons that are close to enemy ships like an ability, dodge 1's kind of fucking shit. As far as things go, like, why not Adept 1?
There's a lot of other better options.
Why not Dodge 1 and Adept 1? So, you know, like, they feel unrivaled, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
there's a clear choice to be made here.
Yeah, and when you're playing against a list that really takes advantage of the Anvil and Hammer perks, it feels like a game that it has lost balance.
I think there's a reason why we haven't seen this come back.
Yeah, but there's a lot of interesting things to explore, like gaining additional abilities for meeting these fleet restrictions. Obviously, none of these are usable. None of these perks are usable. They're either overtuned or like so boring that no one would do it, you know?
So, you know, correct me if I'm wrong here. It seemed like one of the things you're kind of trying to touch on is how, you know, looking at these changes, you know, it perhaps gives us some insight into a rules change that we might see with the new expansion coming out. Am I correct in saying that?
Maybe not so much as a rules change, but like a rules document that says, this is the goal of this Summa All Things event. And I feel like it's going to look a lot like this. Maybe not with the perks, but maybe with the concepts, the kinds of... Because these are the rules that AMG have come up with. Like, this isn't old FFG stuff. This is like a document made by AMG. They released it, and this is what they came up with. And this being their first one was just an example of like how disconnected they are from a game of Armada and like what is either interesting or, you know, feels fair and balanced. Because when you get someone who can break the game and they get a hold of these perks, it's fucking insane. Like what if you're playing against someone and, you know, they have a fleet, you have a fleet, and they brought Moralo Evol, and then they choose Unrivaled Starfighters. Like, do you know the kind of abysmal matchup that would be?
That's not a fun game.
When they get to, like, before the round starts, at the start of the command phase, they'll just move 3 lambdas and activate Moralo 3 additional times before the ship phase. And then
That's
they'll
a
do
lot.
their whole bullshit. Like, what if they have first player? So then they'll do that, activate Moralo Evolve 3 times, and then they'll activate their fucking Quasar, and then activate an additional, like, 5 or 6 times. It's just an abysmal time. And same thing with Anvil and Hammer. You'll just do a huge shot. I think I did one shot where I had 12 damage against an Acclimator. He had Obi-Wan, Expert Shield Techs, and ended up taking like 2 damage. So he took a 12 damage shot, took 2 damage, or something ridiculous like that. It's just insanity is the point.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like they played one game and we're like, okay, we got to write some rules. And
yeah, it definitely feels like that.
So, I don't know. Like, I like the fleet restriction aspect. Like, I would like to see smaller fleets, right? Because we definitely had took a step towards larger fleets in like the Corellian conflict and stuff like that. Like, you have like I think like the sector fleet battle or whatever. So, especially like with this, like, I imagine it's going to be us spiraling towards a black hole situation. I would like to see like smaller fleets kind of show up.
Well,
Like,
that could be interesting because, like, let's say, just staying on topic with these kinds of fleet building restrictions. Let's say you build a fleet and you're restricted at 350. Like let's say you don't put in 50 points in your fleet. You stop at 350 out of 400, and then you get some insane benefit,
like an extra evade.
like one of these Anvil and Hammer perks, like an extra redirect or an extra evade or something like that. And maybe you do have like a more elite fleet that has some of these cool perks, and maybe that's worth it. And maybe that feels balanced.
To me, that is.
Or let's say, let's go the other direction. Let's say you can build to 450, but now none of your ships can have more than 1 upgrade card.
Ooh,
You know?
that's interesting.
Just a simple line that says, these are the 1 or 2 restrictions, and this is the benefit. I'm not sure how fucking fair it is, but like, I'm not a game designer.
Fair. I mean, I definitely expect to see like a restriction, like no large ships, right?
Yeah.
Like that's something I kind of expect to see coming up.
Yeah, but I think that can really open up an interesting kind of fleet building aspect.
I think so. Like we know there's going to be like this coaxium token, right? Like I definitely feel as though it's going to play a part. Blow up a ship with coaxium. Anything within like 3 to 5 takes 2 damage.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a mix of capture the VIP and the Corellian conflict hyperspace token. So where you collect a coaxium token, and the whole goal is probably going to be get as many ships out from the fucking big tentacle monster as you can.
That sounds great.
And there's only 3 coaxiums. So you pick one up, and then you put a hyperspace token on your ship, in the next round it flies away, or something like that. Or you bomb the fucking big tentacle demon. I don't know, but I want to know. I want there to be a page that fucking, I want to know what we're gonna be playing. I want to
start
hyped.
getting hype.
Yeah, I don't want to open up the box the day of and have to figure these fucking rules out in front of 20 people.
That makes sense.
Like, I want to know now. Like, because they say it's coming out soon. There's 2.5 months left in the year. So is it coming out this year? I mean, if it comes out and we don't have a fucking like Carneck supplemental document that says this is actually how the game works, there's just going to be mass confusion, and then it's just going to be end up like put to the side for next month when I have time to read over what the fucking rules are and how to play the goddamn thing. I want to know now.
You and I are in the same boat. But fair, yeah.
So,
that being said, I think we kind of wrap this up a little bit, unless you have anything else you would like to add.
Yeah. So let's hit on the things, like just final thoughts of what we like about this whole setup.
I like the fleet restrictions.
Yeah.
Well, potential fleet. I don't like these ones, but I like the concept of fleet restrictions.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of on the fence of whether or not I like the perks. I like the restrictions. I don't know if I like the perks. But it's just because these perks I think are broken.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of have to see what else they think of. But it leaves a lot of room for improvement, I feel.
Yeah, and I think like having a fleet restriction, again, that's one of the things that I like, and just having one or two bonuses or benefits to your fleet because of those restrictions is like really cool. And I think the idea of perks is okay, I guess. I don't like it. It's kind of on the nose. Like I want it to be an upgrade card. Like it's just I don't like if you showed me this image of these perks, I would be like, oh yeah, that's just for a different game. That's not for Armada. The only thing that's our Armada on this is the redirect token icon. That's the only thing.
I agree with that.
It could be for any game. And it just doesn't sync up with what Armada is. It needs to be an upgrade card that I can put by my fleet. I don't want to print out this weird document. Imagine trying to convince someone to play this with you and they don't know what the fuck is going on. It's like, hey, let's play this event rules. And it's like, oh, your fleet has perks now. And they're like, did you make that document? Did you just type that up? Like, where's my artwork?
Like, it would be so much better to have, like, a card that's like, no large ships, you get this thing.
Exactly.
And
like,
it's cool.
It's got to maintain consistency. Like where's my artwork for Unrivaled Starfighters? Where's the little image of the Starfighters dodging around a ship? Or like for Anvil and Hammer, like just make an ISD take a big exploding shot and have a big image of a power shield, It's like, It's not that fucking hard. Yeah, but it's just completely disconnected from the game. And that's one of the major dislikes about this. Like, I'm all for talking about how unfair these perks are, but that's different than than me not even being able to associate it with the game of Armada.
I think that this is a rare episode where you and I are agreeing on most of these things.
Yeah. And you've just been introduced to this like today. Like, imagine playing a game and you're like, these perks are out of fucking control.
So, since we've been talking about it, this actually did kind of bring back some memory of me reading these things. I remember reading it and then nothing else.
Yeah. And that's how I assume most people went through and encountered this. Is like, they read it, they're like, I can't get a game in this weekend, and never played it at all.
Yeah. And that's what happened with me. So I definitely think that happened with most people. And that's, again, like, bringing this kind of full circle. Armada's not a game that you just call some dude up and it's like, hey, what are you doing right now? Right? It takes planning. Even for you and I, like, we plan this 2, sometimes even 3 weeks in advance.
Yeah. You definitely need a lot of time to set up. It's like a whole, 4-hour experience, Like,
it's an afternoon.
Yeah.
So, like, I can't do this and then fucking go to work, right? Like,
yeah, or you can't just like be done with work and be like, oh, come over, we'll do a 15-minute game,
No,
it's fucking ridiculous. So that was one of the major dislikes. Was just like, hey, like maybe 1 month, put this out so that we can read the fucking rules, and then say, okay, starting November, this event starts, and you get these perks. Play 1 or 2 games. I can do that. And then the next month, just have it be like a consistent rolling out thing. And also, like, just having 2 sets of perks to pick from, like,
it's pretty restrictive.
Is not enough. Like,
and then one that's clearly better than the other.
Especially one that's clearly better. In all aspects, at every tier, it's better. In such a significant way. That you just are playing a game of Armada where both sides are playing Anvil and Hammer, which is what happened. Is like, I chose Anvil and Hammer, my opponent chose Anvil and Hammer. And so now we're just playing this tuned up version of Armada, and it doesn't really feel that interesting because we're like, are you getting your redirects? It's like, of course I'm getting my redirects. That's why we're playing right now. And it's like,
It feels very homebrew.
are you re-rolling all your dice for your first attack? And it's like, of course I am. Like, why wouldn't I? You're going to do the same thing with your first attack. You know, is just this weird power increase of Armada, and it didn't feel interesting at all. So
Yeah. All right. Cool. I think that's it. We can kind of wrap that one up if you're ready to kind of move on a little bit.
yeah,
How
let's
does
go
that
on to
sound?
list review.
So moving on to our next segment, we're going to be doing a list review, specifically a Raddus list, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So this is a Raddus list.
We don't have the assault defense and nav listed here, so we can potentially talk about what might be good fits for those. But we're starting out with an MC-75 Ordnance Cruiser at 100 points. He's going to feature Lando Calrissian, Ordnance Experts, Electronic Countermeasures, External Racks, Assault Proton Torpedoes, and Profundity. Excellent, totaling at 130 points. Next, we'll have an MC-30C Torpedo Frigate, natively 63 points. He's going to feature Admiral Raddus himself, Walix Blissix, Ordnance Experts, External Racks, Foresight, totaling at 110 points. We're also going to feature a Hammerhead Torpedo Frigate, one of my favorite ships visually. It's going to have
it's so
Ezra
cool.
Bridger. Oh, yeah, it's so good. Ezra Bridger, Shriv Sergov, External Racks, Gorell's Honor, totaling at 53 points. GR-75, Medium Transport. It's going to have Hondo, one of your favorites, Hondo Onaka. Going to have Comsnet as well, which is a great card, totaling at 22 points. For squadrons, Shara Bay at 17, Tycho Kelchu at 16, Dash Rendar, very good at 24, Standard YT 2400, a little strange at 16, total squadron value is going to be 73, total fleet value at 388 points. So first things first, you can kind of help fill in the gaps for me here. What is the main difference between 1.0 and 1.5 Raddus?
So one of the major changes from Admiral Raddus is it's like a small-ish change, but because of it, the whole entire way you build Raddus lists has completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this Raddus fleet, is because this is what I feel and what I've seen some people playing is like the go-to Raddus list. Because now you don't have as much flexibility, even though you have an increase in range, and that kind of restricts your fleet building options. Because the original Raddus said before deploying fleets, you set aside one friendly ship, start of any round, deploy that ship at distance 1 of a friendly ship, and then can't be overlapped squadrons and can't be the first ship to activate that round. Pretty standard.
It seems like the difference is now it has that range restriction of deploy that ship at distance 1 to 2 of you. Am I right?
Yeah.
Or command value 3.
Now it's a command value 3 or less, so you can't Raddus a Starhawk. Imagine the fucking nonsense of Raddusing in a Starhawk.
I don't think that's nonsense, but we'll come back to that.
Okay. Now the big change is at the start of any round, you may deploy that ship at distance 1 to 2 of you. So you specifically means the ship that Raddus is on.
Mm-hmm.
So before, you could have a really cheap GR-75 and a really cheap CR-90. And then you place them kind of at opposite ends of the board, and you just kind of try and get behind the fleet or in as good a position as you can. And then you just
they
get
have to
to
commit
pick.
one direction or the other.
No, then you just get to pick which one Raddus comes in on. The GR-75 or the CR-90. That's how it used to be. So you had this just huge deployment area that you could place Raddus in. It was just this like quantum zone of Raddus, where it could be in between these two ships, or you could deploy it at the GR-75 or at the CR-90, either one, it doesn't matter. But now it's whatever ship Raddus is on, that's the one that it has to be deployed at. But you get a little bit of range increase. You get distance 1 to 2. But now you can't decide based on, each round or the way the game is going. Or if your GR75 dies, now you can only do 1, It's more clear where Raddus is going to be. And you don't get to just, have 2 ships go in separate ways. And it was fucking nonsense.
Fair enough. All right. I mean, so first thing to kind of talk about here, and let's go ahead and touch base now. I don't think that having a Starhawk flash in is I think it's great. Like, it's a great perk. I don't think that's outlandish. I don't think that's game breaking.
The reason it's outlandish is because you can just delay the Starhawk till round 4, and then it'll never die.
But that's the game, right? Like, it's a points game. This isn't a table game.
It is a points game, but you can just put so many points on the Starhawk that if it's unkillable because you only have 3 rounds to target it, and depending on where you can put it, it's just you put it in a space where it's not double arcing your opponent's ship, and you just can't do it. And it's just a nonsense idea to me to be able to Raddus a Starhawk.
So for me, I feel like the Raddus has always been a bit of a gamble, right? Because if you delay too much in that tactic, these ships get blown up. I mean, that's it for you, though. Am I right?
Yeah, that's true. And I've done that before, where someone overextended with a Raddus ship, and you just tap it with Simoon and bye bye.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a concession at that point.
Especially like the Onager being in play now, which I believe came out around the same time
Raddus,
as it started.
yeah.
So I feel like I don't know. I don't think it's that outlandish. I can see where you're coming from for sure, but I'm not in that same boat with you.
And you're talking about just the Starhawk coming in?
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I feel like it's just easier not to have to deal with, all that nonsense of a Starhawk coming in. Because, I mean, you put Raddus on a really maneuverable ship, and it's just imagine start of round 3, your ISD has a Starhawk double arcing its rear arc.
Yeah, no, that is a pretty tough
You just
deal.
haven't been able to shoot at it, and now it's behind you. So,
but there's so many steps leading up to that.
That's true, but I mean, CR90s are fucking maneuverable as hell, and distance 1 to 2 is significant. It's not within distance 1 to 2, just the tiniest little corner.
Tiny little corner. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, pros and cons, but I think it's balanced, personally. At that point, I think it's balanced.
We'll just disagree on that. But also, one of the main components of having an effective Raddus list is having a significant bid.
Tell me why.
Because, if you don't have first player, then you don't get to do the cool, you Raddus in, like, an MC75, and then you profundity out the Hammerhead, and then, because you're first player, it specifically says the MC75 can't go first, but the Hammerhead that just popped out can. And it gets a fucking range 1 or close range shot. It gets to do nonsense. It gets to ram, all that good shit. But to consistently get that, you need a huge fucking bid.
And again, that's just another balancing aspect of that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's talk about some other aspects here. Let me pull up that list again. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 4 activations, am I right? That's a pretty good amount.
Yeah, but remember, at the start of the game, you'll only have 2 activations, because you only have the MC30 and the GR75 on the board.
Something interesting here, and you're not going to like me bringing this up, and you're going to disagree.
Okay.
You may set aside one of your friendly ships. You don't actually have to do this.
You're right on me disagreeing with you. Because you are correct. You may, but if I'm building a whole Raddus fleet and I'm paying 26 points for this one ability, I'm gonna fucking use it every time.
So maybe you can correct me a little bit, because aren't there a lot more expensive commanders for the Rebel fleet than 26 points?
There are a lot more.
What would you say is the cheapest for Rebel commanders?
Dodonna and Krista.
Where are they at?
20. So it's like 6 more points, or 6 less points for Dodonna and Krista, because they're both at 20.
That's not that much. I feel like using him for the ability to do this if it suits you is valid, but also at the same token, maybe not even using him. For instance, sometimes when I use Ramadi, right? Sure, like it's great if I can overlap ships, but at the same point, he's just a cheap commander to use. If I don't end up using his ability, he still has that secondary thing of I have other upgrades that are handy.
I mean, yeah.
I know you're not going to agree with it. It's not even like a super strong argument that I have, but I still think it's valid.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if... But that's one of the things about this list, because one of the things I'm about to bring up is maybe if you're flying against an onager, and you're like, oh, well, what if they kill my MC-30? The MC-30 is specifically built to where that will just never happen. So I kind of agree with you, maybe if this was a different list, like if you just have like Wiko CR90s, but that's kind of the thing, is I feel like the way that Raddus is now really restricts the kinds of efficient Raddus lists you can build, because he's on the ship he's on, and he's not just some elusive commander who can deploy on any ship, you know?
Yeah, no, the restrictions definitely change the game.
And so you generally will put him on a small ship and all that. But this MC-30 is kind of built to where that doesn't happen. So MC-30's got double evade, double redirect. It's got foresight, so when you resolve the evade, you affect an additional die. And then when you resolve the redirect, a defense token, you can choose one additional hull zone to suffer damage. So it's like...
Yeah, that's pretty tanky.
This is a survivable ship. Even if you take an onager shot, if you're at extreme range, you can discard one to cancel 4 dice.
That's really impressive.
And then, next round, you just get that evade back with Whalix Ballistics. The scenario in which, like, an onager just fucking pops you is so slim.
But how many points did it take to make that happen? Like 5, 8 for foresight? I mean, it's definitely, I think, purpose-built in that sense. I don't think that's just like a native thing that you're going to see on the MC-30.
Yeah. Well, for sure, those upgrades aren't native. But, like, because Raddus is so specific and limited now, is that I feel like having this foresight, Raddus boat is necessary. Because, like, if you've got, a Corvette A and you put Raddus on it, and they shoot at you with an onager, like, that thing is fucking dead.
Yes.
It's got double evade, 1 redirect. There's no extra oomph. They can just out-dice you. You're not going to be able to cancel enough. It's like you're going to have to get a Corvette A and like put a defensive retrofit on it or something. And even then it might still die.
That's super valid.
You can only redirect so many shields.
You can only use that defense token once.
And if they just do enough damage, it's over. The MC-30 is just enough to where you can survive a big hit. And honestly, if you're taking more than 1 hits with your MC-30 and you haven't deployed Raddus yet, then, I mean, you're just asking for it, But I think Foresight really allows you to survive, because you don't have to completely spend your evade to use Foresight's ability. You don't have to discard it. You can just do it for each attack.
Good point.
And you've got double evade, so...
That's going to last a while.
I feel like unless you are really fucking flying by the seat of your pants and you want to do like a CR90 Raddus boat for some extra points, is like... I feel like you're kind of limited in this really evasive MC-30 torpedo frigate.
Fair. Anything else of note talking about this list here? Tell me about what is Shriv again? What does that one mean?
So Shriv, this hammerhead is really great. Okay, so like just the deployment advantage you get, you can just perfectly get a double arc after you Raddus MC-75 and it pops out of profundity, But it's got Ezra Bridger, which is great, Shriv Shurgov, X-Rax, and Gorell's Honor. So Ezra, once it pops out, once you activate the hammerhead first, because hopefully you have a high bid for a first player, you just get to move an obstacle. So like if there's an obstacle in the way of the MC-75, you can move that and like place it in front of your target ship, like an asteroid, so you can just fucking destroy a ship.
That's awesome.
But Shriv, when you reveal a command, you can discard a squadron dial or token and discard, and choose one enemy ship at close range. Choose and discard gunnery team, support, offensive, defensive, attack upgrade cards, ordnance, ion, or turbo laser, and just discard it. So like imagine Shriv pulls up and discards your fucking gunnery teams.
It's a big deal.
Or your swivel mount batteries, or your XI-7s.
And for only 6 points, that's not bad.
He can just roll up and discard your ECM.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. And then, like, what can you do? Because you've got so much flexibility with your positioning, you can't get damage off on the hammerhead before it gets to you. It's going to be a fresh hammerhead. So, like, it's an almost guarantee that you're going to get this Shriv off. And you've got Hondo, so you don't even have to put in a squadron command dial. You place the hammerhead.
You just have it.
You get the squadron token, and you get the Shriv. It's easy.
Yeah, so you can definitely do that within the first few turns. And so you can really take advantage of not having those upgrades. Well, your opponent not having those other upgrades for the rest of the game.
Yeah, for sure. And so, you get the dream where you use Edge of the Bridger to move an asteroid in the path of the target. You Shriv their bullshit. X-Rax for extra damage. Confire. And then you Gorell's Honor for the fucking face-up crit. You ram them, they get a face-up, doesn't matter. It's just incredible. It's an incredible ship, and it's cheap. It's 53 points for all that.
I was just going to bring that up. That is a very inexpensive ship.
So I love this, and when it goes off hard as fuck.
No, that's definitely going to be a favorite of mine. I really like this combination in this setup. Very, very good. Yeah, well, go ahead. We'll move on to, this is going to be a quick one, the GR75.
Hondo Comsnet, yeah, easy.
Yeah. Easy peasy. Really good, though. I mean, for 22 points, like, just having the activation itself is really fantastic. And then it's a boat for Hondo.
Yeah, it's a boat for Hondo. You can be comsnetting engineering to your MC-30 if it does start taking damage, or navs, or for all of this stuff. I think we skipped over the MC-75. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, we're coming back to that. I want to talk about these smaller ones and then kind of move on to like the Profundity title and how these kind of tie into that. So we can go ahead and do that now, right? GR75 doesn't need a lot of our time. So let's talk about MC-75. We have Lando, we have Ordnance Experts, we have ECMs, one of the best cards, I believe. Again, external racks with assault proton torpedoes.
Yeah.
And then the Profundity title to wrap it up.
Yeah. So Profundity's going to have the hammerhead in it, one small ship, command value 1, blah, blah, blah. It's just great. And it works perfectly with, the Raddus commander, which you would want from, like, just a thematic, like, stance is, like, the Profundity is Raddus's MC-75, and it deploys a ship at the end of the movie, like this is perfect.
Yeah, we know what's going to be there. That's
and
good combo.
It's specifically for getting around Raddus's restriction of the ship that you brought in can't activate first, but the one that drops out of the Profundity can. So that's why the bid for first player is so great. But Lando is amazing because you can't activate the MC-75 first. You're probably going to be in close range of whatever high priority target you're at. So, if it's got black dice, you really need some mitigation there because you're not going to be able to activate this one. It's going to take a hit because obviously they're going to activate it. If they don't, then you're just playing against someone who's not threatened by the MC-75 when you have like a perfectly positioned double arc on them. And then it's like, okay, then that's fine. But Lando's amazing. It's a one-time use, reroll one or more dice of your choice.
I think that Lando is amazing both as a, an ace and also as an officer upgrade.
Yeah, and really the only reason that you don't have Lando Squadron in here, I mean, God, he's such a great Squadron. I might even consider swapping this officer out so you can have Lando Squadron.
I prefer him as an ace.
Yeah.
But 4 points, though, I mean, that's for those rerolls, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and really that's just to benefit the MC-75 because it's only got brace redirect and 2 contains, and it's like, God, it's not as defensive as I'd like it to be. And so you kind of have to take ECM, and then just Lando lets you avoid such a large amount of damage.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
But Lando Squadron is so good, though.
Yeah, in general, I think this MC-75 is built pretty well. And then for only 130 points.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap.
Like, I think that's like a common thing across these ships is none of them are particularly expensive.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about it is like, you know, they're trying to go after the MC-30. They're probably not going to kill it because it's got Foresight and Whalix. And then once you drop the MC-75 and Hammerhead, like they're not going to target the MC-30 at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just get away with 110 points of your fleet. And then maybe it gets into a good position, snaps a fucking small ship. It's a great fleet, and it can do a lot.
I definitely agree. I think moving on to the final part of this fleet would be the squadrons. You know, Sharupe, Tycho Kelchu, and then Dash Rendar, and a YT-2400, which I think is a little strange. I guess like to round it all out to have like, you know, the 4th instead of just 3 makes sense.
Yeah, YT-2400 is just an amazing ship. It's speed 4, 6 hull. It's got 4 anti-squadron and a black anti-ship with Rogue. It's fucking great.
The Rogue, I think, is what makes the difference. If it didn't have the Rogue, I would have sooner chosen an X-Wing.
Yeah, I would have just chosen something else. But Dash Rendar is like fucking amazing. He gets all the rerolls and shit. And really, Tycho and Shara are just to lock down any weak shit that's trying to tie up Dash. And Dash is just going to do bomber damage. And the squads, you can probably fiddle around with whatever you like.
And, you know, just looking at this list in its entirety, all this for 388 points.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's the flexibility of deployment of like, oh yeah, at the start of round 3, I get to place my MC-75 however I'd like, double arcing whatever ship I'd like, and then I'm going to deploy the Hammerhead and fuck you up with Shriv, move shit around with Ezra. You know, it's just... It's awesome.
I think this like really like packages a Rebel fleet nicely. Like it's got all the things going off in all the right places, and it feels like a Rebel fleet.
Yeah, it has that kind of like you start out scrappy and then the tides turn. Mm-hmm. The MC-75 is there, drops the Hammerhead, shit starts getting fucked up. The face-ups are coming. You know, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, definitely a good list. I would say on a 1 to 10, this is a 7 or 8.
Yeah, it feels pretty good. So, as far as objectives go, which ones do you think you would take for this fleet?
Okay, you know, I think that for the assault, advanced gunnery is a given.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, we don't have gunnery teams anywhere. Any of these ships getting to shoot twice is a huge boon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'll be fantastic.
But then, what do you get for defensive, you know?
Defensive, that would be yellow, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I'm thinking... You might disagree. I think the fire lanes would be a good one.
Maybe you just
get
put them on your
points
side and just get some points. Fire lanes is always good.
I think with this list it is a points game because like you're gonna lose something, so you know having that extra buff is good. And then navigation's a tough one. I feel like normally I would choose Solar Corona.
You love Solar Corona, dude.
Yeah, I feel like it's just good in every situation. Like, in what situation do you not want the entire enemy's fleet to be deployed? And then on top of that, position yourself to where one of their accuracies just doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's always great, especially if you don't have ECMs. But you do have ECMs. And then I feel like a lot of this list is that you are free, a little bit more free when it comes to deployment. You do already have 4 ships. You do have the 2 squadron additions that you could technically deploy, 2 at a time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough. I don't know if I would choose Solar Corona as the best one, but it's definitely going to be a contender in there.
Yeah. Do you want to hear my options?
You know what, Chandler? I think I might want to hear your options. Go ahead.
So, for offensive, surprise attack.
Okay.
Because then you know where their flagship's going to be. And then... they've got a bunch of fucking raid tokens. You raid their engineering, you raid their nav. They can't escape your MC-75. They can't even deploy at a greater speed, higher than their maximum speed rounded, divided in half. How the fuck did that work? Yeah, so they can't deploy any ship at a speed greater than half of that ship's maximum speed. So like they're not going anywhere. They can't run. They can't point it sideways and run away. Like they're gonna have to deal with your Raddus like right away.
That's definitely in your benefit, yeah.
And obviously raids help. So now for navigation, jamming barrier.
Ooh, I haven't heard of that in a long time.
Now you really have a safe approach. Now they're attacking you with half their pool, 2 dust fields on the board, and you get to place the jamming barrier. So now you have a free fucking approach. You don't have to worry about arcs or onagers at all.
That makes sense. And honestly, and again, this is a points thing, right? So reserving those, not getting stuff blown up is always going to be in your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always hesitant to choose jamming barriers because I feel like it affects you just as much as it affects them.
It does, but remember.
But in this case,
like you've got MC-30 with blacks and blues. MC-75 ordnance carrier is going to get dropped at close. Same with the hammerhead, and you get to choose. You just deploy them beyond the jamming barrier, and there you go. And obviously, these are all objectives that you would give your opponent if you were second player, which would suck because it kind of fucks up the whole routine of, you know, dropping the hammerhead and going first and getting the fuck up field, you know. And then for defensive, obviously, or navigation, my bad,
You're
fucking
good.
Infested fields.
Infested
Obviously,
fields.
because moving obstacles is great. You've got, you know, Dash, YT, Shara, and just nab 4 tokens right off the bat. Exogorths to move the obstacles, and then when the hammerhead comes out, you can use Ezra and reposition it again.
No,
So
that's a really solid.
just some great nonsense that you can do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Those are good options.
I really like this variant of Raddus. And also I like that he's kind of restricted to the ship that he's on, because I played a bunch of Raddus at like 1.0 and it was fucking annoying, dude. It felt like you couldn't do anything. There was no correct response. It was nonsense for sure.
Are you saying that as an opponent or as a player, though?
Just as a player.
Okay.
Just like in general. Because it sucks when like someone has like a commander and you're like, well, fucking I can't do anything. I don't have like any good moves here. This feels bad, you know? You want to at least be able to do something. And the original Raddus, it felt like you had no good options.
I mean, that's how I feel about Vader. You can't do shit about that.
Yeah, but Vader's just a reroll. It's not like there isn't like the large ship on the board and it's just gonna pop out double arcing behind.
You seem to have a lot of value in that.
Yeah, like it's yeah. Hopefully I'll be able to field this one soon. We'll do like a battle report on it. It feels very fucking significant.
I'll be happy to play it. Yeah, so overall, very, very good list review. You know, as always, if you guys have a list that you would like for us to review, please submit it in the comments section of our YouTube channel, and we'll gladly tell you what parts are fantastic and what parts are shit.
There you go.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Brace for Impact podcast. You can check out our battle reports and other video content on your YouTube channel. And if you would like, you can support our future content and get early access to videos and podcasts on our Patreon. We'll see you next time. Before we move on to some other things, this is something that recently came up. I didn't have a chance to kind of add it into our docket for today.
Huh?
But this is Warhammer related, if that's okay with you.
Oh, yeah. What's going on in the Warhammer world?
They released the new box set for Kill Team.
Oh, they did?
They did. Are you ready for who's going to be in it?
Yeah.
Kasserkin and Bespoke Necrons.
Gesundheit?
What do you mean Gesundheit?
What even words did you say? Who are they? What?
Kasserkin.
Kasserkin.
Kasrkin. So, Cadian Troopers.
Oh, okay. Oh, so like guard people.
Cadian Troopers. They're not just guard. They're Acadian. It's very different.
What's the difference? The people.
They're better.
Are they better? What makes them better?
They're better. They're better people. They are. They say that they're better.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Where can I find this new box? What's the name of it? Because I'm trying to look at it.
I'm gonna look it up for you right now. I'm gonna send it over to you.
Okay, I found it.
Did you find it?
Gallo Dark.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And then it should also have the Necrons on there.
Oh, these guys look cool as fuck.
And then bespoke Necrons, right? So right now, the only way to field a Necron is with the Compendium team, which is just like you can choose from either a fire team of fucking warriors, or a fire team of fucking Deathmarks, or a fire team of flayed ones. I think that's it. Or mortals, right? And then you choose 2 fire teams, and like that's fucking it. And that's really fucking boring. But now, if you look at the models, it looks like there's a fucking Chronomancer looking dude. Looks like we have some goddamn Scarab looking things. Like 2 death marks as opposed to like a fucking fire team. It's bespoke. So it's
that's one of the things about the kill team game in general that I'm really down on is that until your faction gets a box, that team is trash. It does. They don't have specialists or any cool rules. It's just like
very true.
They're just dudes, and then if you go up against a team that has a box, like they're just way fucking better.
Honestly, I think that the Necron teams that I've been running, it's really fucking strong. So I'm kind of hesitant to say that it's better, especially if you look at the lineups.
Well, let's wait until we see the rules for these Necrons when they come out. They'll probably be fucking insane.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, I'm so excited. But no, you definitely have a point where you want to wait for the box for your team. But also, they're releasing a box every quarter.
Yeah.
That's like their game plan. And then the new terrain that is in the last 2 boxes. So it was this one, which is like the Kasserkin and the Necrons. And then the other one was also another shipboarding kind of terrain setup, which is actually the field is smaller than the field that we played our kill team on.
Oh yeah,
if you can believe it. Yeah, it's a smaller thing.
Even smaller.
Even smaller. It's much more enclosed. Like you're supposed to be like inside of a ship, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just really, really cool shit.
Oh, I see the terrain. It's got a lot of fucking terrain. Does it come with all that?
It comes with all that, dude. And
That's
the door is open.
A lot of terrain. That's cool. That's fucking cool.
Yeah. So I'm very, very excited. I love the idea of Cadian troopers. Again, the Kasserkin, and then you know how I feel about Necrons. I'm a bit of a slut for Necrons.
Yeah. Necrons are fucking cool. They're cool though, dude.
Mm-hmm.
These guard guys
much
look
more information.
Sick, though.
I'm sorry.
The guard guys look sick.
Yes. You should look up the boarding troopers from the last box that came out. I think you would like those guys even more.
I remember seeing them. They were like the fucking level. Navy, right?
Yeah, they're like the Imperial Navy dudes. They are fucking dope.
Yeah, Kill Team Navy Breachers. Let's see them. Let's fucking see them. Oh, and they were with like the Kroot.
Yes,
That's
the Kroot was the opposite, which I think are a little weird. I don't like them too much, but
I don't like Kroot either. Like I've got Tau, and I'm like, I would rather play anything else than the Tau, or not the Tau, the fucking Kroot.
Right? Yeah,
the fucking Kroot are lame. These Navy Breachers look fucking sick with those shit.
They are next level. And there's like a little robot that you get to, like a little like a bomb disabling robot. That's what I would real world counterpart to it.
That's fucking sick.
Yeah. So these last 2 boxes, and especially this new one coming up, I'm very hyped for. Cool. And, again, not much more information, on it just yet. We really just got like the image releases and kind of like what's going to be featured in the box. Pretty soon, hopefully, we'll have some rule.
Yeah, but once they start doing like little hype previews, they're normally like going to be here pretty fucking quick.
Exactly that. So, but they're, I think, currently taking pre-orders.
Sweet.
Yeah. So
I'm excited. All those kill team things are pretty fucking cool.
I think that, again, I haven't like played a full game of Warhammer or anything like that. I know that you have, but Kill Team is really just right up my alley. And the entry cost is pretty low.
Yeah.
The setup is pretty quick.
From what I've played, Kill Team is really cool. It's really like quick and snappy, but like playing normal Warhammer, man, it sucks so much that the guys that I play with, we've all been like playing these alternate rule sets because it feels so ass. Because the thing is, like, imagine playing a game of Armada, you know, but one person activates all of their army all at once as
That's
one
shit.
big activation. And then, after they go, then you can activate all of your army. Or, what normally happens, what's fucking left of it?
That's just not fun.
So what we started doing that makes the game feel less bad and terrible and awful to play is we go through each of the phases and we just alternate activations. So we'll activate one group, then the other person activates one group. So like, you know, I'll move, then you move one guy, I'll move one guy. And so
It's more dynamic.
it lets you fucking use the models you brought, because, you know, activating a whole army, like, if you've got one guy and his foot is, like, just barely out, and you just fucking jump on that dude, you fucking kill the whole group, and then you're like, I had, like, a whole quarter of my army is gone, and now it's my round one. You know? It feels like ass.
So that's like a big thing. If you're changing core rules like that, like why play the fucking game? Like literally, like it seems like it's like you're playing it just to use your models when you have Kill Team at your disposal. You can just fucking play Kill Team.
Because Kill Team doesn't have cool big robots.
Yet.
And I like cool big robots.
Doesn't have cool big robots yet.
Yeah, but then at that point, that's not Kill Team. But like, that's one of the biggest restrictions on why I don't play Warhammer more is, one, the dudes who play it are fucking, how do I say this, weird to socialize with.
Oh, okay.
You know? You meet some of those people and you're like, oh man, like, why aren't you being cool? Why are you being like a fucking weirdo? You know? And then the second part is the rules are ass.
Yeah.
Like, they've got their general core rules, but there are so many core rule-breaking abilities and stuff that are just on a per-faction basic that, like, you can play against an army and not know anything it's capable of.
So I like that because that seems real to me. But sure, we'll just keep it going.
But yeah, but it would be cool if it wasn't like so significant. I was playing against this one orc guy, and you know, I set all my dudes up, and I was like, all right, my first time playing orcs, and he's like, I'm gonna use this ability, and I'm gonna move like this big truck full of guys, and he's gonna move into your deployment zone. And then he's gonna shoot and unload all his guys, and they're gonna shoot at you. There we go. And I'm like, holy shit. You
That's a
like
wrap.
leapt across the board. You know? And then it's like, it's weird stuff like that where you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, and the moment you have orcs in your face, it's over.
Yeah, that's like something I wanted to know could be possible.
So cool. Yeah, I just want to touch base on that one. Seems like an excellent opportunity to kind of, bring it up in the future as well. But there we go.
All right, take us
see.
away.
Yep. Final thing here for, some closing statements.